Why is at the beginning of the Christian Roman Empire that the first living monastic rules appeared? Yes, it was at this time that everywhere in the Roman Empire that hermitages first flourished. That is to say, people who live everything to give themselves to God in prayer completely, but who did so without no experience and therefore in the fervour of their youth, who do anything anyway, who push the requirement of their consecrated life to absolute limits. Absolute, for example, in fasting, which means that after a few weeks they may well starve. Absolute in the absence of sleep, which means that after a certain time they can no longer hold out. Absolute in penance, going so far sometimes that subject to the phenomena of acedia, that it is to say, overdoses, fed up with spiritual exercises and internal troubles. As much as they were fervent, they returned to the city to give themselves to all possible vices. This is how, confronted with the experience of what man is, the fact that after a certain time, if he draws his bow, the bow of his psychology towards a finality without stops, without taking rest, the human being cracks. The first intelligent monks would establish rules adapted to human nature. Take the experience of Saint Anthony of the desert. He had been confronted after a few months of intense monastic life as a hermitage with all kinds of demons who revolve around him. He represents them as demons of lust, so the desire to give themselves sexual pleasure, demon of gluttony. He thinks of what he had lost when he had been in town, and it turns him around and he couldn't do it. However, he did not want to end up like his companions who had left everything so much so that they had yielded to temptation. And so he said to himself, I have to find a middle ground. It was from this time, from this monastic experience, that Saint Cassian, one of the Egyptian monks who founded monasticism in the West, tells the following anecdote. One day a man from the city of Alexandria came to the monastery to see what the monks had been doing. He found them in the act. They are playing ball. He had been scandalized. He had imagined him in a sense of the absolute, that they spend their lives in prayer, to meet from time to time, eating their meal in silence. Then the father abbot had been there, said to this hunter, are you scandalized by this? So I'm going to ask you something. Take your bow, since you came hunting, shoot an arrow on the ground. The hunter complies. He said to him, shoot another second arrow, then a third, and the hunter complies. After 10 arrows, he said, but I can go on like this, my bow will break. Father Abbot said to him, it's the same for a man. If you stretch his bow too much, it breaks. Thus, through the experience of deep nights, nights of the senses, nights of the spirit, and experience need to take account of human nature, therefore intelligence, philosophical one might say, monks will invent rules that will spread throughout the Christian empire, and one could say it extraordinarily replaces martyrdom. There at least the monks will be humble. You shouldn't have too many illusions. Pride is also put into monastic life. From the moment when becoming a monk is to be somewhat admired, a notable, heroic one can become a monk out of pride. What does it mean? That nothing is perfect in the church, that the Holy Spirit is always there to breathe. And if a method, let's put monastic life, becomes a source of pride, then God moves on to something else.